Hi there kiddos, time for part 3. So by now we've built all the mechanical parts. It's time to get onto the hot end. Now that's going to go right in the middle, right there. And it's going to have lots of wires coming out. And so are the motors and the switches. So let's go on to the electronics now. So here is your main board. You'll also have 5 of these little motor drivers. Now they'll be red or green. I'm going to look at the red one for now. Doesn't matter which color you've got, they're going to go on there. But first, we need to put on these little heat sinks. So these little chips get pretty hot, lots of power going through those. So the heat sink sucks that power away. And they've got lots of surface area, which means a lot more of the heat can escape into the air. So he's going to go right here on the middle on top of that big black chip. And the important thing is to keep it in the middle. We don't want it touching the sides because it'll short those pins out and cause magic smoke. And we don't want it touching that little pot there either. It's okay for it to go on top of these resistors and capacitors. Nice and centered. And we also want it to be set long ways. Not that way. That way. We want it long ways because that's the way the air is going to flow. So peel the little double-sided sticky tape off the back. And first try, get it right in the middle there. That's it. Press it down firmly. And that's pretty much it. Make sure it's down firmly. Now try not to knock it from the side because it can come off quite easily. And of course it never sticks again quite so well the second, third or fourth time. Alright, do that 5 more times. Then go to your main board and we can plug them in. So they plug in just like that. And they go with that little round dial on the right side. So the side that is away from these green towers. Do make sure you put this on the right way. Double, triple, quadruple check it. Or else you'll get the magic smoke. But you can put in all 5 of those. I'm mixing up my colors here. Yours should be all red or all green. And like I said, both colors are exactly the same. Just one is prettier than the other. They all go on the same way. Next, you want to get out this box, and it's got a power plug and 2 wires coming out. Now to check which one's which, you'll find one of them has a black stripe. There it is. Now that black stripe indicates that it's the negative or ground wire, and the other one will be the positive. So the ground wire is not connected to anything. That's going to plug straight to our board. And the positive goes to this switch over here. So the positive is broken and then comes out there. So we can turn him on and off by breaking the positive connection. For the board, you can tell which way it goes from this giant USB here. That matches to that big square over there. So carefully slide him under there. Don't yank on those cables. Be gentle with them. Now line this guy up carefully, and you need 4 pieces of 4mm screws. There it is. Now I'm going to use first line him up. I'm going to use my tweezers because my fingers are too fat to get in there without blocking the camera. Where's that screwdriver? There it is. And screw him in. You'll have to push down quite hard for this one to get it gripped in. And like usual, don't do it all the way because we still need to adjust that and line up for the other 3 holes. Grab the next one and in he goes. There we go. Now I'm actually just going to do 2 for now. So I'll tighten them up, and I'll do 2 just in case I have to come back and undo it again later. And then when we're sure we're done, we can come back and do the other 2. So let's put those aside for now. Make sure it's down firmly. Now, if you look down the bottom right here, look really carefully where it has that 12/24 volts. That's where the power goes in. And you see there's a plus sign on the left and a negative sign on the right. So negative is for our striped wire and positive is the non-striped wire. So let's do the negative first, the striped wire. So that will go into that one on the right. Now do make sure you get this one right, because bad things can happen if we do them the wrong way. So the way these guys work, you have to open them up. So as you loosen that screw, it opens a little grabber inside. So all the way to the left, slide him in underneath, then tighten it all the way down. It's quite a long way. Remember, righty-tighty as usual. And you'll feel it gets a little bit stiffer. That's it, give the wire a tug. If it doesn't come out, you're all good. Let's do the next one. So in the left, that's our positive. So open him all the way up, lefty-loosey, and then this small wire coming out, that's our positive. So we're just going to bend that wire so I can get him in there. This is a bit tricky. Might be a bit easier for you guys with your little fingers. And I'm going to hold that in there while I tighten him up. Let's see if I can do this without knocking the camera as well. So you feel it start to get firm. Don't do it ridiculously tight. But when you're done, give the wire a bit of a tug. If it doesn't come out, then you're all good. And I'll just push that out of the way a little bit. Make it a little bit neater. All right. Let's get rid of that. We're going to test it. So you get your power brick, and you'll see this guy should be marked 24 volts. So all our motors and heaters are going to run on 24 volts. And this does 24 volts up to 3 amps, which should be enough for all our heaters and motors at the same time. So plug that into the mains. Now before you plug that in, make sure you set to off. 0 is off, 1 is on. So make sure it's off. Plug it in. And then switch him on. And you should get some lovely lights like that. And it'll start to flash through. That's just a little test mode which is installed. Now if you don't get lights, switch it off, unplug it, and ask Mr. Jake. Don't leave it switched on if the light's not turning on, because it means you've probably got a short or something like that. But if it's working, you can switch it off, unplug, and we'll move on. Like I said, if it doesn't work properly, unplug it, come and talk to me. And now we'll do the motor wires, and you'll see one's got 6 pins and one's got 4 pins. And we don't want 6 pins yet, that goes to the motor. We want the 4 pins, which goes in the board. And we're going to plug this one in here, which is into the red plug on the right. If you look closely, you'll see it's labeled X. That goes to our X motor. It's a bit tricky to get in there. And the other end, the 6-pin end, they plug into our motors like this. Don't plug it in now, I'm just showing you how it plugs in. You see it doesn't fit one way, but it will fit beautifully the correct way. Isn't that lovely? All right, unplug that. And what we'll do is we'll plug in the next one, which will be our Y motor. And the next one's going to be a bit strange, because the next one is Z. Where's that wire? There it is. So plug in the Z. But you'll probably remember we've got two Z motors. So we plug that first one in there. And the second Z motor, we skip one plug and plug it into the end, which should be labeled E1. So Z will be Z and E1, and we skip the E0. Alright, now what we're going to do now is grab your pliers and just break off this little plasticky thing here. This is a little area just to hold all the wires and keep things neat. So carefully put the wires through here. Try and keep them off to the side there like that. We don't really want them going over the top and getting in the way of those heat sinks. We want air to flow freely through there. Alright, let's have a look. So we'll turn them around and look from the back, because that's where everything plugs in. And the electronics box is going to live right there. So let's try and do all the wires with it set up properly, because that'll save us getting tangled. So that first one is that one that plugged into the red plug, the X plug. Let's plug it into our X motor. Now I'm going to flip him over so I can see up his skirt. And you'll see we've got our two Z motors and the Y motor in the middle. So I'll find that Y wire. Be careful and make sure you get the right one. And that's the Y motor in the middle. So we'll plug that in there. Now the other two, the Z motors, it doesn't actually matter which way you go. Left, right, doesn't matter. It's both Z motors do exactly the same thing. Now if you find you can't reach your plugs because you've put the motor in the wrong way, you're going to have to go and fix that yourself now. But hopefully you've got the plugs open. And that's it. The motors are all plugged in now. Alright. And the next thing is the switches. So the first thing we have to do is look at these wires. And unfortunately, in the factory, the wires were mixed up. You can see one is white, black, and red. That's actually wrong. It should be red, black, then white. Looking at it from the side with those little silver things. So we just have to switch these around. And you can see those little clips in there. So you'll need to get something small. I'm going to use a little screwdriver. And you want to make sure they're loose. Just loosen those up a little bit. What you need to do is push it out a little bit like that. So you don't want to be pulling on it yet. I'm just going to try and push that little spring down. And after I've done that, I'm going to try and pull it a little bit to the left. And you want to try and do both at the same time. Push it down and sort of pull and push left. Don't pull it too hard. You don't want to break the wire. Might take a couple of tries. Just push that little spring down and pull the wire across. I'll get it eventually. There we go. And he just comes out like that. If you look carefully, you can see the little spring on the top there. So now we'll get the red one. There we go. And it has to go up the same way with that little clip pointing up. Push it in, and then just give it a little tug to make sure it's not going to come out again. So it should be red, black, then white, looking at the side with those silver clips. And once you've done that for all your wires, we'll go and plug it in. So all three will probably have that problem on one end. And then we've got the 3 spots they go here. So the red one is for the X switch, and you'll see there's a little label above that. We tuck that away. The Y switch. And so you see when you plug them in, from the top down it'll go red and black and white. So just make sure, double check you've got them the right way. It will cause big problems if these are wrong. So just double check those. Let's go have a look at the machine. And so the first one, X, just plugs in there. And the next one in the blue plug is Y. And that plugs to the back of your Y axis. Now finally, this is Z switch. Now I've taken it off because I found it's a bit hard to get the plug in there. So you'll want to try and do it this way. I'm going to unplug the wire from there for now. I'll plug it in to the switch. Then I'll feed the wire down through that square hole. I'll pull it through. Maybe be more gentle than me. Get him in position, and we just need to get those screws back in. Now they were 6mm screws holding him in. Oh, and I'll plug that guy back in first, I think. There we go. So when that's in nice and firmly, the switches are done. There's one more thing we've got to do here. Get one of these long 22mm screws and screw it down here. Now be gentle because that little plastic protrusion is not that strong. So you don't want to try and bend these screws out. Just screw them straight down. There we go. And then we need to grab the fan and this little plastic mount. Line those up like so and run these screws through there. So whatever screws you've got left you can use here. Just find the shortest one that'll fit through the fan and poke out the other side. There we go. And now we've got the hot end. What I want you to do is use your pliers and tighten this as much as you can. Make sure you're not pushing on the wires, but the metal part. So tighten that as much as you can. Now feed the wires through the back. We're going to try and keep this neat. And now be gentle, don't tug on these wires, especially those white ones can be a bit delicate. It'll be stronger later on once we tie them all together. But for now, just be careful not to tug on them. And he pops in there just like that. Now make sure those wires are pointing out backwards, as you can see there. So get him in there nice and firmly. And then he fits in there like that. Now get some of those 22mm screws Now these holes, you may have to clean them out first. I've already done that. Now I've got these screws ready. Now what I want to do is I'm going to tighten one side a little bit. And then the other side. So we don't want to go one side only. We want to tighten it down gradually. Left, right, left, right. And don't over tighten it. You know you're good when you cannot turn that hot end anymore. So we're just clamping it there. Alright, we've got a few more wires to do. Oops, that's the wrong one. So this one here labeled HE0, that's hot end 0. And this is where those larger red wires will go. So I've just opened that one up, I've loosened it, lefty-loosey. We push the wire in the side. And then we're going to tighten it up. So just turn that to the right until you feel it starts to get tight. There we go. Give the wire a little tug, make sure it doesn't fall out, and then you can move on to the next one. So I'm just bending that a little bit so it can go in sideways like I'll need it to. This can get a bit fiddly. If you really can't get these, you may want to actually take the board out so you can get better access to these. Righty-tighty. And give it a little tug and so that one came out. Let's try again. Lefty-loosey, fit it in the hole, righty-tighty, much better. Now that white wire, that's the temperature sensor, which goes to the hot end, and that goes into this little black plug over here. Now it doesn't matter which way around it goes, no positive and negative for this one. It can go in either way, but it has to go into this little black slot. Make sure it goes all the way down. Now this is the fan that we just screwed onto the front of the hot end. And he's going to go up here in the very top left. So that's just going to give him 24 volts, which will always be turned on. And let's just tuck those wires out of the way. And finally, this is the cooling fan for all the electronics. He's going to pop in here, and you want the label pointing inwards, and make sure you've got the wire pointing sort of up and to the side, so it's not in the way. And then he just plugs into there. Now that's 24 volts as well, but that one can actually be turned on and off in the software. And that's it, the electronics all done and wired up. Well done, I'll see you in the next step.